Good evening to you, viewers. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinoxe television, where we're broadcasting live from Douala, the nation's economic capital. I am Innocent Aze. In our major stories, a replica of the Edea road accident over a month ago that claimed the lives of 11 members of the same family and roads to bury their mother has been recorded in Pitwa, a locality in the North region. The difference, 15 members of the same family died in an accident while on their way to welcome their loved one who was returning from pilgrimage. Also in this newscast, economic activities are fast getting to a standstill in Douala, Cameroon's economic capital. It will be shocking to learn the deplorable state of roads accounts for this, with the city dwellers tired of sending distress calls to the city or Douala City Council dons. Those were major stories. Stay with us. Good evening once more. Thanks for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinoxe television. We begin with this sad story. It was a Black Sunday for a family in Pitwa, a locality in the north region of Cameroon. 15 members of the family died on their way to welcome their loved one who was returning from pilgrimage. They died in an accident. Details in this report compiled by Malak Glory.
A public transport vehicle damaged to the point of no repair. It was involved in a road accident on July 9th in the locality of Pitwa in Garoua, North region of Cameroon. At least 15 people, most of whom are members of same family, died on their way to welcome a family member who had just returned from pilgrimage. Witness on the ground disclosed that the accident occurred after midnight on Saturday 8th as the vehicle that was transporting family members ran into a large tree. They say 13 lifeless bodies were pulled from the wreck. About 5 persons in a critical state were transported to the Garoua Regional Hospital, where 2 others later died. The driver on his part explained that a sudden flash of sleep surprised him just before the vehicle crashed into the tree. This accident is the second in weeks that has wiped out people of same family members.
Other accidents have been due to the deplorable state of roads in the Republic of Cameroon, and now plying the 33-kilometer stretch of roads linking Epeka 21 and Bonne-Poupa in the Littoral region has been a veritable nightmare for road users for the past years. The deplorable state of roads has hindered economic activities as road users find it difficult to go about their daily activities. We have more with AC Lucy Liengu.
For several years now, the 33-kilometer stretch between Peka 21 and Bonne-Poupa in the littoral region has been in a dilapidated state. An ordeal for road users who complain of visiting the garage on daily basis due to continuous breakdowns.
30-45 minutes que je suis là et puis je suis entré dans le trou que vous voyez là derrière.
I have been here with my car for about 30-35 minutes. I got into a hole, got a breakdown. Really, the state of the road is not good. It's deplorable.
Le fait de sauter dans le trou, le pot de phare lâché. Et puis, vraiment, je sais pas, c'est déplorable. Sur nos motos surtout, à cause de l'état de la route.
With our bikes mostly, we have tire puncture. Even our bikes get damaged. Constantly, we visit the garage.
Constamment, nous sommes au garage.
What's to eat is during the rainy season with the thick and slippery mud, which makes circulation partially impossible. Locals plying this stretch of road for various activities find it difficult because the cost of transport remains exorbitant. The cost has added to 5,000 francs.
Non, actuellement, le transport, c'est 4 000 francs.
C'est 4 000 et la route n'est pas bonne.
Et la route n'est pas bonne.
C'est la mort.
The inhabitants have equally been worried why works initiated by the Minister of Public Works have been halted for some time. Their wish is for the government to respond to their plight because as days go by, the road is splitting.
We now take you to the nation's political capital. Inhabitants of Nko-La Famba in the central region of Cameroon say they go through hell in search of health care in neighboring areas. Their nightmare began with the closure of the Nko-La Famba Integrated Health Center, which served as their lone health facility in the area. For me, Anton Sanda reports.
This is what remains of a public hospital building in Nko-La Famba in the central region of Cameroon. We are at the Nko-La Famba Integrated Health Center. The once vibrant health facility has been closed for months now, pushing local inhabitants to go for long distances to seek health care.
Depuis la fermeture, on s'est débrouillé pour aller à Yaoundé. C'est difficile pour nous.
Local sources say that they pay at least 2,000 francs CFA to get to the military hospital in the Nkwa neighborhood, which is the nearest health facility to Nko-La Famba. Added to the long distances and high transport costs, local inhabitants also cry that they pay more for health care elsewhere than they used to pay in Nko-La Famba. Local administrative and health authorities say the health center was closed by the divisional officer of Nko-La Famba for diverse reasons, which were mainly conservative.
Il suscite l'adhésion de la communauté, qui suscite.
Buka Osmade, Inspector of Administrative Services in the Ministry of Public Health, says the divisional officer was angered by the abusive absences of the former hospital director and repeated cases of theft involving newly acquired hospital equipment.
Le cambriolage dans cette formation sanitaire, des équipements, des matériels qui venaient nouvellement d'être acquis.
Considering the impact and consequences on the local population, the Minister of Public Health proceeded to appoint a new hospital director. The ministerial decision, followed by corresponding consultations, resulted in a decision to reopen the health facility. It was within this context that an evaluation team of administrative, security and health officials from the Ministry of Public Health visited the health structure. For me, I'm from Sanda.
We now talk about this sad issue. It is in Yaoundé, still where family members of Donla Bertrand and followers of a church having a conflict over his mortal remains. Yaoundé city dwellers say the image of the church is Le Tabernacle de Liberté has been tarnished by the evil acts carried out by the members and their pastor. Malak Glory.
Coffins right here are not for two different corpses but for one. A tense confrontation broke out this Monday at the mortuary of the Yaoundé Central Hospital. This was between family members who came for the corpse removal of their loved ones, Donla Bertrand, and members of the Pentecostal church, Le Tabernacle de la Liberté, who came for same purpose. Donla Bertrand had abandoned his family to join the said church. The native of Balachi in Bambutus, west region of the country, got seriously sick. Family members revealed that the said church, in complicity with the wife of the deceased, deprived him of medical attention. After a long struggle, the latter was referred to the Yaoundé Central Hospital, where he gave up the ghost. After the unfortunate situation, the determined members of the Tabernacle de la Liberté presented themselves at the mortuary to get the corpse of Donla Bertrand. On the other hand, the family members of Donla Bertrand came for same corpse removal. The commotion between both parties was short-lived as the deceased was finally transported from Yaoundé to his native village, Balachi, where he would be buried. We are gathered here at the mortuary with the corpse already out. This is the coffin and the body. We are about to travel to the village for the burial. Pray that we get there safe. Unfortunately, some family members of Donla Bertrand, his wife and his brother have remained prisoners of this mysterious church. The church for the past years have been on the lips of every individual in the city of Yaoundé. In June 2020, during the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, the church pastor Caleb Gua Atangana asked his Christians, especially school children, not to put on face masks, a situation which led to the dismissal of the students from examination centers. Meantime, the church house at the Simeyong neighborhood was shut down by security elements ordered by the governor of the Central region. While the Christians struggled to oppose to this decision, the church pastor disappeared into thin air. For over 3 years, this church and its pastor have multiplied their evil act, as the closure in 2020 lasted only for few months. The church has been accused to be the reason behind several broken families in the city of Yaoundé.
Thank you for that report, Mala Glory. And that's where we end the first part of this newscast. Up next, Talking Point. Good evening once more. Thanks for joining us in Talking Point. Today we'll be having as guest Dr. Dimanjo Michael, political analyst. And today we'll be talking about the decision taken by the president of Gabon, Ali Bongo, to seek a third term in August 26, 2023 presidential election. That will be his third term. And so far he has ruled for 14 years and he is age 64. We are having Dr. Dimanjo Michael on standby. Good evening, Dr. Dimanjo Michael. 64 years old Ali Bongo Ojimba of Gabon declares he will be seeking a third term in the August 26, 2023 presidential election after ruling for 14 years. Tell us, what's your analysis?
We should first of all look back at the time that Ali Bongo took over power. That was in 2009 when he took over from the father. We saw in him a youth, because by then, personally, I supported when he came up and took over power. And Ali Bongo was the candidate of the youth. You know, he carried in himself that vision. And I remember one of the most remarkable things that he did at that particular time was that he turned to the Commonwealth. And turning to the Commonwealth was like, people applauded and said, okay, he wants to end this Francophonie stuff and he wants to go for more transparency. And we termed him a gentleman. And, you know, coming out from a very, very long rule of the father, and he, even though he's a son that took over, we were happy that, I mean, he's a youth. There was a lot of prospects. 2018, he had promised during this second mandate to build about 5 dams, hydroelectric dams, to build schools, roads, I mean, you know, about 500 nurseries. And of course, in 2018, he was struck by a kind of, let me call it depression, generally, I would say. And, you know, since then, he has taken that stroke as leverage, coupled with the fact that the coronavirus also came. And I know this is one of the things that he's using to lure the Gabonese, that, I mean, coronavirus and all the other things. But I think he has not delivered. To say in a nutshell, Ali Bongo has not delivered. In his opening speech, when he was accepting that he's going again for the third mandate, he said, I am coming, I'm interested in your success. And that is why I'm coming out, I'm standing again. And I asked myself, is it a mockery or what? What success is he talking about? The first mandate, it was no success. Second mandate was a big failure. And then the third mandate, he wants to plunge the 2.5 million Gabonese into the deep sea or a mire, where escape is going to be very, very chimerical. And I think another person should be able to come up. But the big question is, who is to come up, Mr. Innocent? When you see that in 2016, the elections was very, very competitive. We had people like Zumba Adama, we had people like Mba Oye, we had people like Jean Ping. I mean, these were people who came like in a coalition to go against Ali Bongo, and they didn't succeed. It is not now that the opposition is in dispersed round that we even have hope. But as we say, politics is regional. And if you look at the Central African sub-region, you see that it's ruled by autocrats, it's ruled by dictators.
How do we then understand people still believing in him to make dreams of Gabonese come true by begging him to run again?
There is what we call la politique du ventre. François Bayard has written about that, la politique du ventre. The stomach politics in Africa. They do not believe in him. We even look at the rally that he organized to announce his candidacy for the next election. How many people were there? And you don't look at the little chunk of people. The social media tends to fool us, because even the Nigerian elections has even shown to us that the social media is something you should take with a pinch of salt. So I don't think really so many people believe in him. Now, the issue is that Africans are suffering. People are indeed suffering in such a way that after spending 7 years in Inferno, in a deep hole, you come back after 7 years. It is like Hitler giving an example of a fowl. You catch a fowl, uproot it of its feathers, and then render it helpless and miserable, and then you threw the fowl on the ground and then threw corn to the fowl. Because the fowl is already desperate, you really expect the fowl again to turn and tell you thank you. And exactly that is what the fowl does. Because it is so desperate, there is no way out. It feels, that there is no hope anyway. What does the fowl do? Because it does not have not corn for a long time, and it is hungry, it has to turn and say thank you, even though you have destituted it. That is what is happening with Africans and African politics. So I don't blame those who come. They take little, little sums of money that are insignificant, and then they turn back to say thank you. They don't care. What Africans care about is the bread now, and that goes around with even our developmental perspectives. That people only look at what is now. They don't project. They don't look ahead. During campaigns, they don't care whether if this vote I'm casting now, and I've taken 2,000 francs to cast this vote, what am I going to eat for the next 7 years? Is it the same 2,000 francs? This is how myopic we are when we are looking at politics. So, to me, it is not that you have so many people who are thanking him. It is about the loss of vision as far as politics is concerned. You find that people are desperate, and at one moment you just feel that if I don't take it, what would I have as bread?
Dr. Ntimancho, in 2021, he stood as favorite candidate of his Gabonese Democratic Party to win due to no opposition coalition. Same this year, is it still possible for an independent opposition candidate to defeat him?
They mentioned of 2017. That is an election, one of the elections in Africa that I followed very closely, the elections in 2016. And it was so interesting. Where you had great candidates. You had, I've mentioned Zuba. Zuba was a Union Nationale. I've mentioned the other man, Adama. Adama was Rassemblement, Héritage et Modernité, who joined together with Jean Ping at that particular time. It was like people had to support these three candidates who were frontliners as far as opposition is concerned in Gabon. And that time they failed. The people didn't support them. Either the people didn't support them, because sometimes I do not want to woefully say that the people didn't support them, because you know how the elections are run in Africa. Gabon is not an exception. And you find that the Ministry of the Interior is part of the election organization. The Constitutional Council is part of the election organization. The election governing body is part of the election. So you have three bodies who are answerable to the power in place. And therefore, how do you expect the opposition that is not represented in these three big powers that run election to thrive? They cannot thrive. So sometimes the blame is not wholly on the population. We tend to blame the opposition or the population that they are still voting the same people. But just the kind of trick, the kind of manipulation that goes with voting cards and all of those will make you understand that sometimes we have really a long way to go as far as election organization is concerned. And that's why people keep on crying. We want a single ballot box, a unique ballot box. We want an independent electoral committee, and all of those are all cries that we're crying. And people know exactly why there are those cries, because you cannot be fighting with somebody who is at the same time, you are playing football with somebody who is at the same time the referee and the player, and you expect to win the match. You cannot. And therefore, I think that it is all a show if you want to go as a single independent candidate. Now, I call that self-glory, that you want to dare. But I'm asking myself, how daring would you dare at that particular time? Because how do you hope to win? And given to the fact that if you do not have any, let me say imperialist, and sometimes most people still believe in imperialism, that you have people to back you from outside, either France or America or all of those. But then it should be for a price. And that is why you realize we are going deep and deep into our own problems, because you go in with promises, and until you fulfill those promises before you start doing anything for your people, you find that you mess your hands into dirty issues before you get in. And when you get in, before you start delivering to your people, you are already at the end of your mandate, or you are already at the end of your life. And it makes people to keep on staying in the president, and people to believe that there is no life after the presidency, because they have not yet fulfilled what they came to fulfill. So I think presidential, going in as an independent candidate is an uphill task. But to me, it is a task that is difficult to fulfill. We have had others in Africa. I like William Ruto. He went in, even though he went in under, a very strong support. But we need countries like Kenya, and I think Gabon still has 50 years to reach Kenya.
In Cameroon, 2 years from now, by God's grace, do you foresee same declaration to seek another term in the 2025 presidential election?
I told some people the other day that in Central Africa, we believe in father to son. The only thing that I don't yet believe in is in the Holy Spirit in Central Africa. Meaning that what? The power goes from the father to the son. And therefore in Cameroon, anybody who thinks that the power will go to any other person, well, okay, let's wait and see in 2025. But that is what I've seen from the perspective that we have seen it in Africa in general, and Central Africa in particular. We have here in Gabon, that's what has happened. We have in Chad, what has happened. And I think that in Cameroon may be the same thing. We already hear of the Frankists coming up. And I'm asking myself, how, with the opposition that we have in Cameroon, because that is what pushes me to make this declaration. Because the opposition in Cameroon is the most disorganized, disunited, and belligerent opposition that we have ever had. Belligerent means they are at war within themselves. Instead of striking and following that lion, to catch that lion and defeat it, they are fighting among themselves, the hunters. Why? What is really happening? The opposition in Cameroon is in dispersed rounds. And I see strongly uphold this statement that it is all about belly politicking. Because each and every person is fighting for the food of the stomach. How do you understand that in a country of 28 million people, we have 347 opposition parties, and 2 or 3 opposition parties have not succeeded since the 1990s to stand together and say we are forming a coalition? They actually try to do, but before you know it, they have gone in dispersed rank and they become, all-time enemies. So that is it. What is happening? So 2025, to me, there's no game. You look at, we are just about in less than 2 years, that's what we're talking about. Normally we are supposed to see people coming up, but what we see is people acting films or dramas. Somebody goes and sit here, gather a few people, family members, take photos, send on social media, and say, okay, we are working towards 2025. Is that the way to work for 2025? That's what I'm asking. We have had a hardliner politician like Mr. Pobia, who has been in power for close to 40 years. Means that he knows the in and out of how politics is played in Cameroon, and he knows where to strike. And that is why we are not surprised when it comes to close after election, we hear about the Jivans. Those who think we're the hunters become the hunted. Those who think we're those who are vying for power really become the simpletons and those who are hungry, those who are what we call the mendiants, the beggars of powers. Yes, because they soon become surrender. And what makes them surrender is greed that they have, because each person is fighting for himself. They are not fighting for the population, they are not fighting for the citizens, they are fighting for themselves. And that is why they go behind doors, collect money. We have to say this thing. They collect money and then they come to form coalition and say they are the GFN that are out to support the country, as if even the President Pobia needed their support. He doesn't need their support. What he does to win, he does to win, whether they support it or not. And you know, it's ridiculous. When are we going to stop being so childish in politics in Cameroon? I mean, politics have become that kind of a thing where people think they will get in to get rich. You don't get into politics to get rich. You get in politics to serve. You get in politics for development. But we have seen that most people have no jobs. They work with suitcase and their politics is inside their bags. Political parties which never organize congresses. You have one president of a political party and all time one president. No Congress, nothing. He is the only one. Because he is looking for self-glory, for self-recognition. So 2025, to me, is not an event-creating election year. It is just a normal year that we are going to suffer the same effect of one person.
Some politicians have been preaching political transition, like Edith Kawala of the Cameroon People's Party. 2025 could be that long-awaited time. What do you think?
What you should know is that politics sometimes is not violence. But I know that sometimes when cheating, rigging of election is institutionalized, some of us begin to think that they should go the other way, the violent way. Well, let me start with Mr. Kamto. When you look at chronologically, give a panoramic view to the way the MSC has come down, you understand that their popularity has dwindled. It is good that it's a party that we thought could take the SDF way as it was in 1990. But it has been so short-lived because it went up, the pomp, the fanfare went up, but it was so ephemeral. We needed it perennial, but it was so ephemeral. And let me tell you, today, well, I don't know, the MSC doesn't have that steam and that capability to take this country as one. Well, we are talking about Kawala. Madam Kawala made a statement, which of course I thought Cameroonians could also follow, but even though the statement could create some kind of instability and wrong impressions, Madam Kawala is one of those politicians, of course, who said people should waste their time going for elections. I mean, she said that, and said the best way to take this thing is that Cameroonians should rise up. I think, as I said, when cheating and rigging is institutionalized, some of us, we tend to believe in statements like this. Because if you feel that you cannot have your freedom through the ballot of the box, you can have, if you think you can have it another way else, you could. But when I make a study of how power has been taken in Africa, we look at places like Mali, we look at other places as Central African Republic, we have look at places like DRC and all the other places, Burkina Faso, and then you're asking yourself, but if you have to take power that way, sometimes it is like you instigate something. It is always, you always know when to start, like something like crisis, but you never know when to end. And I also look at the Anglophone crisis, where some people think we take it by power, and they wanted to allude it to the Bible. And you think taken by power, sometimes you need to be strategic. And I think that the best way, as we think, is that citizens should register, choose their candidate, and the candidate that is could be chosen is only when the opposition prove themselves. And I'm asking them, I'm giving them a task, tasking them to come together and give the citizens, the electorate, the reason to choose for them, because the best way to take power is through the ballot box. I mean, that's the most peaceful way that people can be sure that the future is brighter.
How do we understand that in Africa democracy, it is the incumbent who usually wins till thy kingdom come?
Incumbents are always winning because they are the strong men of Africa, and our institutions are the weaker things, that the frameworks that we have. Where you find elections competitive is where institutions are stronger. We have a few in Africa. I mean, I can cite a place like Ghana, of course. I mean, we have had the case of Kenya too, that is coming. I mean, that we see strong institutions that you cannot sit and dictate to the election organizing chairman that I want this result. You will not dictate to the Minister of Interior. You will not dictate to the Constitutional Court that will declare the election. You don't dictate. And that is why, since the president, the incumbent, is the the superhero, he is the alpha, he is the omega, he decides, then you begin to know why the incumbent always wins. I made an analogy of the referee and the player, because in effect it is the incumbent that is the referee of the elections. He decides where elections is won. How? The duos at the local levels, the sub-duos are representing the head of state, and the sub-duos are very, very fundamental and central in organization of election. S-duos are very, very fundamental and central. And what happens? You will tell us more as a journalist that their motivation is colossal. Their motivation during this period is colossal. And it's not just about motivation. It is about buying them. They are buying them. I've seen the allocation of budget during the election period to the DOs and the SDOs and all their entire major. It is juicy. It is succulent, making them believe that, okay, they have to give this thing to the incumbent. That is why who is giving them? It is the incumbent. And I think that is what is happening, that the incumbent does not organize election to lose. Secondly, in countries where incumbent organize election to lose, there are term limits. That is when the incumbent has good faith. That term limits, he knows that this period I'm going away. And that is what happened in Kenya recently. It is because Kenyatta, Uhuru, knew that he had the term limit. He could not go anywhere again. It happened recently in Nigeria, our next door. It is because the outgoing president knew that that was the end of his limit. So, at least in that case, sometimes you want to settle score with one who is going out. And that is the reason why most people stay on in power. You saw your hand, you saw your hand, you saw your hand, and now you make the presidential palace your own permanent home. You have the land title of the place, because you know that if you go out, if you saw your hand, you will not be left free. And that's why you have in Cameroon, they keep on battling with laws, changing laws like, a woman changing, in a ways, because they know that they want to protect somebody. Perhaps by accident he goes, he leaves power, he will be protected. So those are some of the things. Incumbents will always win, in as much as there is no presidential term limit, in as much as they keep on organizing election and they are in control of everything.
Before you go, what should an ambitious opposition politician do to defeat the incumbent?
Opposition, first, he should have the image of a youth, and he should galvanize the youth and make the youth interested in politics. You follow us as I did in Nigerian politics. I know how the youth were galvanized in Nigeria. Election was an enjoyable thing. You loved following up election campaigns. Obi was the candidate of a youth. And that is why you found that he galvanized the youth. Use social media. That is true. Even though social media, you don't trust it 100%, because if you trust it 100%, Obi will have already won 99.9%. But then, use social media. Social media has enormous influence on politics. Social media, well, in Nigeria, the NSAS in Nigeria was thanks to the online galvanization of Nigerian youth and whatsoever. Social media has done quite a lot of things that many people they wonder and they cannot imagine to what extent we can go. We need to work with the youth, and we need to have the youth candidate. You see what is happening in Senegal? You see, it is getting interesting. Why? The first issue is that the opposition candidate, the main opposition candidate is the youth. It's a youth, and it is always like that. And what is the message that they are sending across? That we do not want octogenarians any longer, because octogenarian now in Africa is linked to what? To neocolonialism, is linked to the West and all of those. They feel that They are there for their own self-interest. And they think that the youth can bring in a different narrative. And therefore, for any candidate in Cameroon to rise up and have that kind of an aura that Ni Jong-Fundi had like in the 1990s, where when he stood up and just said, so far don't finish the whole place was like. When Ni Jong-Fundi will leave Bamenda and is coming down to Douala, all the houses along the street, people came out to put flowers and all of that, and he passed down. You need to work with the youth and let the youth know that the world is changing, that, you know, there's a lot of unemployment. People are frustrated, the youth are all frustrated. They want somebody who will come and identify with them, with the problems that we have. And therefore, they want someone to come and link them to the world. The world is changing because of the aspirations, because of the zeal, because of the zest of the youth. That is why you find the changes in application, in social application, whatsoever, because of the youth. Any candidate, whoever he is, if he leaves the youth out, he's not going to go anywhere. And therefore, when you come, the youth form a majority population in Cameroon. And therefore, when you get the youth, automatically you are getting the women. Because the women and the youth, they almost work in one thing. Leave these old people aside and work with the youth. And I'm telling you, if you get their hearts and their minds, you are gone. Because, let me tell you, what happened is that the youth always refuse to defend the votes. Because they usually say, vote and defend your vote. But the first people to leave polling station out of discouragement are the youth. When you find 5, 6, 10, 15 youth stand at the police station to the end, they don't reach in that place. So the youth have the power, they have the energy to be able to change the world.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Zvancho Michael, for joining us on Talking Point this evening. I want to thank you as well, dear viewers, for being part of this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast. We're hoping that you will stay put and follow other interesting programs on Equinoxe Television. See you tomorrow, God willing. Nice evening.